Dr. John, a young and dedicated 45-year-old physician, felt a mix of pride and dissatisfaction as he walked through the pristine corridors of St. Magnus Hospital. The immaculate white walls and the constant scent of antiseptic were a constant reminder of the hospital's high standards. Working at one of the most renowned hospitals serving the elite of society, he found himself surrounded by luxury and technological efficiency. Every examination room, every wing, was a monument to modernity and medical advancement. Yet, an undeniable coldness permeated the environment. John was known for his clinical precision and technical skill, but internally, he grappled with a growing void. The lack of a human touch in his daily interactions left him restless. He remembered his medical school days, where empathy was emphasized as much as medical knowledge. Now, in an environment where the clock and efficiency were revered above all, he felt something was fundamentally wrong. The hospital, with its glass walls and cutting-edge technology, was a shining example of innovation. But while state-of-the-art robots delivered medications and electronic health records eliminated human errors, something crucial was being lost. The human warmth, the empathy, and the true connection with patients were disappearing, buried under clinical efficiency. John questioned his true calling. What did it mean to be a doctor? He thought about his mentor's words from medical school. Medicine is not just about healing bodies, it's also about healing souls. These words echoed in his mind as he walked to his office, ready for another day of consultations with wealthy and demanding patients. The elite came to St. Magnus not just for healing, but for the prestige associated with the hospital. This often made interactions feel like cold, impersonal transactions. His colleagues, although they respected his skill and dedication, seemed equally trapped in the hospital's dehumanized routine. Dr. Victoria, the strict and relentless supervisor, epitomized this culture. For her, efficiency was the only measure of success. John felt stifled by the constant pressure to maintain the hospital's high standards, with no room to question the absence of compassion in the environment. As John prepared for his first patient of the day, he couldn't shake the feeling that something crucial was missing, something that technology and efficiency could never replace. He looked out the window of his office, observing the bustling city below, and wondered if he would ever find a way to reconcile his passion for medicine with his desire for a more humane and compassionate practice. And it was in this state of reflection that his routine was interrupted by an unexpected event at the hospital entrance. As Dr. John walked past the reception desk, his eyes were drawn to a commotion near the entrance. A young woman, looking disheveled and out of place, stood there, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. Her clothes were dirty, and her hair was a tangled mess. She seemed completely lost, her presence starkly contrasting with the pristine surroundings of the hospital. John's heart ached as he watched her. He could see the vulnerability in her eyes, the silent plea for help. Without a second thought, he made his way towards her, ignoring the curious glances from patients and staff alike. As he approached, he heard the firm, authoritative voice of Dr. Victoria behind him. "Dr. John, this is not the place for someone like her. She needs to leave immediately," Victoria said, her tone cold and unyielding. She was known for her strict adherence to protocol and her disdain for anything that disrupted the hospital's efficiency. John turned to face Victoria, his jaw set in determination. "Victoria, she needs help. We can't just turn her away." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Our priority is to maintain order and efficiency. If she's not a registered patient, she doesn't belong here." John felt a surge of frustration. This was exactly what he had been struggling with, the lack of empathy, the focus on efficiency over humanity. He looked back at the young woman, who was now trembling, her eyes filled with tears. Suddenly, the young woman's eyes rolled back, and she began to convulse. John's medical instincts kicked in immediately. He rushed to her side, carefully lowering her to the floor to prevent injury. The lobby erupted into a flurry of activity as nurses and other staff members hurried over. "Get me a gurney and a sedative now," John commanded, his voice steady and authoritative. He turned to Victoria, his eyes blazing with determination. "She needs help, and we're going to give it to her." Victoria hesitated for a moment, then nodded sharply. The nurses quickly brought over a gurney, and John carefully lifted the convulsing woman onto it. As they wheeled her towards a more private area, her convulsions began to subside. John administered a sedative to calm her down. As she lay there, her breathing becoming more even, she opened her eyes slightly and whispered, "Please, I don't know where else to go." Then, exhausted, she closed her eyes, almost unconscious. At that moment, John realized the importance of empathy and compassion in his work. It wasn't enough to be efficient and technologically advanced. They needed to remember the human aspect of medicine. He resolved to make a change, to bring more humanity into his practice and, hopefully, inspire others to do the same. Then, Nurse Claire entered the room, carrying a fresh set of clothes and a blanket. "Thanks, Claire," John said, giving her a grateful nod. "Can you stay with her for a bit? I need to inform Dr. Victoria and get some supplies." Claire nodded, her face showing the same concern that John felt. "Of course, Dr. John. I'll keep an eye on her." John stepped out of the room, his thoughts still on the young woman. He needed to find out more about her, but first, he had to face Dr. Victoria. As he approached Victoria's office, he braced himself for the confrontation. Victoria looked up from her desk, her expression stern. "Dr. John, you disobeyed a direct order. This is not acceptable." John took a deep breath. "Victoria, she had a seizure. She clearly needed medical attention. We couldn't just turn her away." Victoria's eyes narrowed, her tone icy. "This hospital has protocols for a reason. Your insubordination will not be tolerated." John felt a surge of frustration and resolve. If following protocols means turning away someone in desperate need, then maybe our priorities are wrong. Victoria stood, her posture rigid. "You're fired, John. Collect your things and leave immediately." John left Victoria's office, a mix of anger and relief washing over him. He knew he had done the right thing, but the reality of losing his job hit hard. Returning to the examination room, he found Claire helping Kate into the clean clothes. Kate's eyes fluttered open, still dazed but more alert. She looked at John, her voice trembling. "I've been held captive for months. They kept me drugged. I don't remember much, but I escaped and didn't know where to go." John's heart broke at her words. "You're safe now, Kate. We'll figure this out together." Claire gave John a concerned look as she finished helping Kate. "What's going to happen now, Dr. John?" John sighed, feeling the weight of the situation. "I'm not sure yet, Claire. But first, we need to get Kate somewhere safe." He turned to Kate, offering a reassuring smile. "Can you walk, Kate? We need to get you out of here." With Claire's help, John managed to guide Kate to his car. As they drove to his apartment, John's mind raced with thoughts of what to do next. He knew they needed to contact the authorities, but first, he needed to make sure Kate was stable and secure. Once at his apartment, John made a bed for Kate on the couch and handed her a glass of water. "You can stay here as long as you need, Kate. We'll get through this." Kate looked around, her eyes wide with gratitude and lingering fear. "Thank you, John. I don't know what I would have done without you." As Kate settled in, John made a few phone calls, arranging for a private investigator to look into her case and contacting a lawyer friend to help with his sudden unemployment. Despite the challenges ahead, John felt a renewed sense of purpose. Helping Kate had reignited his passion for truly caring for people, something he had felt slipping away at the hospital. The night was long and filled with restless thoughts, but as John watched over Kate, he knew he had made the right choice. John's small apartment felt like a refuge from the chaos of the day. The cozy, lived-in space provided a stark contrast to the sterile, impersonal atmosphere of St. Magnus Hospital. He watched Kate sleep on the couch, her breathing now steady and calm. The events of the day had been a whirlwind, and the reality of his situation was starting to set in. John's phone buzzed with a text message from his friend, Mark, a private investigator. "I'll start looking into Kate's case first thing in the morning. Hang in there, buddy." John sighed, feeling a wave of gratitude for Mark's support. He knew Kate's ordeal was far from over, but having someone investigate her situation was a crucial step forward. As the night deepened, John couldn't help but reflect on his decision to defy Victoria. He had always been dedicated to his job, but today had shown him how far the hospital had strayed from true compassion. The image of Kate, vulnerable and frightened, flashed in his mind. There was no way he could have turned her away. The next morning, John woke up early and found Kate sitting up, looking around with cautious curiosity. She glanced at him, offering a tentative smile. "Good morning." "Good morning, Kate. How are you feeling?" John asked, trying to gauge her mental and physical state. "A bit better, I think. Still trying to piece things together," she replied, her voice soft but steadier than before. John nodded, bringing her a cup of tea. "Take your time. There's no rush." As they sipped their tea, Kate began to open up more. "I remember bits and pieces. They kept me in a basement, always drugged. I don't even know how I escaped. It's all so blurry." John listened intently, his heart aching for her. "We're going to figure this out, Kate. You're safe now." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. John opened it to find Mark standing there, his expression serious but supportive. "Morning, John." "Kate." Kate nodded in acknowledgement, her eyes wary but hopeful. Mark wasted no time getting to work. He set up his laptop and began asking Kate questions, gently guiding her through her fragmented memories. As the morning wore on, small details started to emerge, painting a clearer picture of her captivity and the people involved. John watched as Mark worked, feeling a sense of relief that they were making progress. He knew it was a long road ahead, but they had taken the first crucial steps. Later, as Mark packed up his things, he turned to John. "I'll keep you updated. There's definitely more to uncover, but we're on the right track." "Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it," John said, feeling a renewed sense of determination. After Mark left, John turned to Kate. "You're incredibly brave, Kate. I'm sorry for what you've been through, but I promise you're not alone in this." Kate's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, John. I don't know how to repay you." "You don't have to," John replied, his voice gentle. "We'll get through this together." As the days passed, John and Kate settled into a routine of cautious recovery. Kate's health slowly improved, and bits and pieces of her memory started to resurface. John, now unemployed, found himself with more time to focus on Kate's well-being and the investigation into her ordeal. One evening, as they sat in the living room, Kate stared out the window, her thoughts seemingly far away. John noticed her distant expression and sat down beside her. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked gently. Kate sighed, turning to him with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. "I'm just trying to make sense of everything. It's like living in a fog, and every time I try to grasp a memory, it slips away." John nodded, understanding her frustration. "It's going to take time, Kate, but you're not alone. We'll piece it together." Kate gave a small, appreciative smile. "I know. It's just overwhelming. And I keep thinking about you, John. You lost your job because of me." John shook his head firmly. "I didn't lose my job because of you. I lost it because I chose to do the right thing. And I don't regret it for a second." She looked at him, her eyes searching for reassurance. "But what about your future? Your career?" John leaned back, contemplating the question that had been on his mind as well. "Honestly, I don't know. It's a bit scary, not having a plan. But I do know that helping you was the right thing to do. And maybe this is a chance for me to find a new path, one that aligns more with what I truly believe in." Kate seemed to find comfort in his words, but there was still a shadow of doubt. "I don't want to be a burden, John. You've done so much for me already." "You're not a burden, Kate. You're a reminder of why I became a doctor in the first place. To help people, to make a difference. And right now, that means being here for you." Their conversation was interrupted by the ringing of John's phone. He glanced at the caller ID and saw it was Mark. Excusing himself, he answered the call, his heart racing slightly. "John, we've got some important news," Mark said without preamble. "I've been looking into Kate's background, and I managed to track down her family. You're not going to believe this, but Kate is the daughter of Mr. Williams, the director of St. Magnus Hospital." John felt a surge of shock and disbelief. "Are you sure, Mark? That's incredible. I double-checked everything. It's true. I've already contacted Mr. Williams, and he's desperate to see his daughter. He had no idea what had happened to her." John's mind raced with the implications of this revelation. "This changes everything. Thank you, Mark. I'll talk to Kate about it." As he hung up the phone, he turned to Kate, who was watching him with concern. "Kate, There's something important you need to know. Mark found your family. Your father is Mr. Williams, the director of St. Magnus Hospital. Kate's eyes widened with a mix of shock and confusion. My father? I don't remember. It's all so blurry. John took her hands in his, trying to offer comfort. It's okay, Kate. This is a lot to take in. Your father has been looking for you all this time. He's desperate to see you. Tears welled up in Kate's eyes. I can't believe it. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now, John replied gently. Let's take this one step at a time. We'll contact your father and arrange for you to see him. You're not alone in this. As the night wore on, John couldn't shake the feeling of impending change. The next steps would be critical, not just for Kate's healing, but for his own sense of purpose and justice. He was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that the fight for empathy and compassion was worth every risk. The next morning, the air was thick with anticipation. John could feel the weight of the impending reunion between Kate and her father. He had contacted Mr. Williams, and the director was on his way over, his voice trembling with emotion over the phone. The revelation of Kate's identity had shifted everything, adding a layer of urgency and significance to their efforts. John spent the morning helping Kate prepare for the meeting. He reassured her, reminding her that she was safe and that her father was coming to help. Kate, though nervous, seemed stronger, her resolve bolstered by the support around her. A knock on the door interrupted their preparations. John opened it to find Mr. Williams standing there, his usually composed demeanor shattered by a mix of relief and anguish. He stepped inside, his eyes immediately finding Kate. Kate, he whispered, his voice breaking. My God, I've missed you so much. Kate stood there, tears streaming down her face. Dad? In an instant, they were in each other's arms, the months of fear and uncertainty dissolving in their embrace. John watched the reunion, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment. He had been part of something truly meaningful, something that transcended the sterile efficiency of his former workplace. After the initial emotional wave passed, Mr. Williams turned to John, his eyes filled with gratitude. Dr. John, I can't thank you enough for what you've done. You saved my daughter's life. John shook his head. I just did what any doctor should do. I'm glad I could help. Mr. Williams nodded, his expression turning serious. We need to get Kate checked out by specialists to ensure she's fully recovered. And, Dr. John, I'd like to speak with you privately. They moved to the kitchen, leaving Kate to rest. Mr. Williams looked at John with a mixture of respect and regret. I heard about what happened at the hospital, how you lost your job because you chose to help Kate. That was wrong, and it's something I intend to fix. John was taken aback. Mr. Williams, I didn't do this expecting any reward. I just wanted to help. I know, Mr. Williams said, his voice firm. That's exactly why you should be at St. Magnus. We need doctors who prioritize compassion over protocol. I'm reinstating you, and not just that. I'm promoting you to Chief of Medicine. We need someone with your integrity leading our team. John felt a rush of emotions, relief, pride, and a deep sense of validation. Thank you, Mr. Williams. I'd be honored to accept. As they returned to the living room, Kate looked up, sensing the change. John sat beside her, taking her hand. Your father and I have agreed that you'll get the best care possible, and I'll be there every step of the way. Kate squeezed his hand, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, John, for everything. In the days that followed, Kate was transferred to a private facility where she could receive specialized care. John resumed his role at St. Magnus Hospital, now with the authority to bring about the changes he had long desired. His first act as Chief of Medicine was to implement a new set of guidelines prioritizing patient empathy and holistic care. Dr. Victoria, faced with the undeniable evidence of her failure to uphold the true spirit of medicine, was dismissed. The hospital began to transform, its cold efficiency giving way to a more compassionate and humane environment. John visited Kate regularly, their bond growing stronger with each visit. Kate, now surrounded by support and love, began to heal, her spirit gradually mending from the trauma she had endured. As weeks passed, St. Magnus Hospital began to change under John's leadership. The new policies he implemented began to shift the atmosphere from a clinical, impersonal environment to one that valued genuine human connection. Yet, the transformation came with its own set of challenges. John's reinstatement as chief of medicine wasn't without resistance. Some senior staff members, accustomed to the old ways, were skeptical of the changes. They saw John's new approach as a threat to the hospital's efficiency and their own professional standards. There were murmurs of discontent and even attempts to undermine his authority. One afternoon, as John was reviewing patient care plans in his office, he received an urgent call from Mark. The private investigator had been working on Kate's case, and he had uncovered something troubling. "John, I've been digging into Kate's captors and their connections," Mark said, his voice tense. "While I haven't found the exact individuals responsible, I did come across information that suggests there might be powerful people involved who could be using their influence to cover up their tracks. This could be bigger than we thought." John felt a chill run down his spine. "Do you think this could jeopardize Kate's safety or the investigation?" "It's hard to say," Mark replied, "but I think it's important to stay vigilant. There are too many loose ends. You might need to take additional precautions." John thanked Mark and hung up, his mind racing with worry. He had already been under pressure from the hospital's board and some of the more traditional staff members who were disgruntled by the new direction. Now, the added threat of powerful figures possibly interfering in Kate's case made the situation even more precarious. He decided to share this development with Mr. Williams. That evening, they met in John's office, the atmosphere heavy with the weight of their responsibilities. "Mr. Williams," John began, "Mark has found evidence suggesting that there might be high-level interference in Kate's case. This could put both her safety and our investigation at risk." Mr. Williams's face grew serious. "We need to address this immediately. If there are influential people involved, we must protect Kate and ensure that justice is served. I'll reach out to legal experts and security professionals to safeguard her." John nodded, feeling a wave of relief at Mr. Williams's support. "Thank you. I'll also need to address the concerns of the hospital staff. Some are resisting the changes, and their dissatisfaction could complicate matters further." The next day, John faced a tense meeting with the hospital staff. The room was filled with murmurs of discontent and skeptical glances. John stood before them, trying to convey his vision while addressing their concerns. "I understand that the changes we're implementing might feel challenging," John began, "but they're essential for providing better patient care and fostering a more humane environment. We have to remember why we're here, to help people." Despite his heartfelt speech, the resistance was palpable. Some staff members questioned the practicality of the new policies and expressed doubts about John's leadership. The situation was tense, and John knew that gaining their trust would be a gradual process. Outside the hospital, Mark continued his investigation, working tirelessly to uncover more details about the potential threats. He coordinated with security experts to enhance Kate's protection and keep the investigation under wraps. As the complications mounted, John and Kate's relationship deepened. John continued to support Kate's recovery, visiting her regularly and helping her rebuild her life. Despite the external pressures, their bond provided a source of strength and comfort for both of them. John's days grew increasingly complex as he balanced his responsibilities at the hospital with ensuring Kate's safety and well-being. Despite the mounting pressures, he found solace in his deepening relationship with Kate and the small victories he achieved in transforming the hospital's culture. However, just as things seemed to be stabilizing, a severe turning point struck. It was late in the afternoon when John was called into a meeting with the hospital board. The atmosphere in the boardroom was tense, the board members' expressions a mix of skepticism and concern. "Dr. John," the chairman began, his tone formal, "we have reviewed your recent changes to hospital policy and the ensuing backlash from some of the senior staff. While we appreciate your dedication, there are concerns about the impact on the hospital's efficiency and reputation." John listened intently, trying to gauge the board's stance. He knew his reforms were radical, but he believed in their necessity. As a result, the chairman continued, "We have decided to place you on administrative leave, effective immediately, while we conduct a thorough review." John felt the floor drop out from under him. Administrative leave? But the changes we're making are crucial for the hospital's future. The chairman raised a hand to silence him. "This is not a decision we made lightly, Dr. John. We must ensure that the hospital operates smoothly and maintains its esteemed reputation. We will notify you once the review is complete." John left the meeting in a daze, the weight of the board's decision pressing heavily on his shoulders. As he walked through the hospital corridors, he felt the eyes of the staff on him, a mix of sympathy and satisfaction in their gazes. The news spread quickly, and by the time John reached his office to pack his things, it seemed the entire hospital knew. Feeling defeated, John decided to meet with Kate and Mr. Williams at a nearby cafe where they often met to discuss her progress and the investigation. As John arrived at the cafe, he saw Kate and Mr. Williams waiting for him. Kate's expression immediately shifted to one of concern when she saw John's face. "John, what happened? You look terrible." He sat down, rubbing his temples. "The board has put me on administrative leave. They're reviewing my policies and the backlash from some of the staff. I'm effectively out of the hospital for now." Kate's face fell. "I'm so sorry, John. This is all because of me." John shook his head vehemently. "No, Kate, this isn't your fault. I did what I believed was right, and I still believe in it. It's just harder than I expected." Mr. Williams placed a reassuring hand on John's shoulder. "We're not going to let this stand, John. You've done so much for my daughter and this hospital. We will fight this." As they sat in silence, the weight of their challenges pressing down on them, John's phone rang. It was Mark. "John, I've got some news. I managed to dig deeper into Kate's case. There's a lot of secrecy, but I found some leads that could help. Can we meet tonight?" John agreed, feeling a spark of hope ignite within him. After hanging up, he turned to Kate and Mr. Williams. "Mark has some updates on your case. It might give us the breakthrough we need." That evening, they met with Mark at a quiet cafe. Mark's expression was serious, but there was a glint of determination in his eyes. "I've uncovered some key information," Mark began. "There's a network of influential individuals connected to Kate's captors. They've been using their power to cover their tracks, but I found evidence linking them to several missing persons cases. We have enough to go to the authorities." John felt a surge of hope and resolve. "That's great news, Mark, but we need to ensure Kate's safety first. These people won't go down without a fight." Mark nodded. "I've already arranged for additional security for Kate. We'll present the evidence to the police and work with them to bring these people to justice." The following days were a whirlwind of meetings with detectives and legal advisors. The authorities, armed with the evidence Mark had uncovered, launched a full-scale investigation into the network behind Kate's abduction. The process was daunting, but John, Kate, and Mr. Williams found strength in their shared purpose. Finally, after weeks of tension and uncertainty, the authorities made several high-profile arrests, dismantling the network behind Kate's abduction. With the criminal network exposed and justice served, Kate could finally begin to heal without the shadow of her captors looming over her. The media coverage was extensive, and Kate's story became a symbol of resilience and justice. Her bravery and John's unwavering support inspired many, and the hospital's public image improved significantly. Mr. Williams kept his promise and advocated fiercely for John's reinstatement. The hospital board, faced with the overwhelming positive media attention and public support, had no choice but to reconsider their decision. John was not only reinstated but promoted to chief of medicine, a position where he could continue to implement his vision of a compassionate, patient-centered approach to healthcare. On his first day back at the hospital, John was greeted with applause from the staff. The tide had turned, and even those who had initially resisted his changes were now supporters. The hospital began to thrive under his leadership, balancing efficiency with empathy and setting a new standard in patient care. Kate's recovery continued smoothly, and she maintained a close friendship with John. She decided to use her experience to help others, becoming an advocate for victims of abduction and abuse. Together, they organized community outreach programs and support networks, ensuring that others would receive the help they needed. One evening, as John and Kate sat on the steps of the hospital, watching the sunset, Kate turned to him with a smile. "You've changed my life, John, not just by saving me, but by showing me what true compassion looks like." John squeezed her hand. "You've changed mine too, Kate, more than you'll ever know." The hospital continued to flourish under John's leadership, becoming a beacon of hope and humanity in the medical community. And as for John and Kate, their bond grew stronger with each passing day, a testament to the power of empathy, compassion, and the unwavering human spirit.